a bouncy Topo trail shoe, a ZipFoam midsole with energy return. This is the Vista, a brand new from the ground up design from Topo. Topo is definitely up the ante here with this new model. 40 millimeters at the heel is what I measure, 40-35, 5 mil drop. I believe that's a little bit up from their Ultra Venture model, but it's not just the stack height that is the story here with the shoe. It is the ZipFoam midsole itself. He showed up on my doorstep yesterday, and I quickly did a 10K 6-mile run straight out of the box. It was actually my second run of the day. I had done a heavy interval section earlier in the day, so it was kind of a planned recovery session, and I was actually just blown away. No way around it. I was blown away by how good the Vista felt underfoot. Now let me give some context to my first impressions on the run there. I had of course weighed the shoe, took the measurements, all that kind of stuff at home before the run. 11.8 ounces, 334 grams for this shoe in my US 10.0. That is absolutely a weight that is objectively on the high end of the scale in my shoe size. The route yesterday was on a flat canal path, 0 elevation gain. So given the interval workout earlier, I was clearly in the recovery mindset for that run, and I thought, well, it's kind of a heavy shoe. This might be great to kind of do a slow-paced recovery run. Pretty comfortable here. You know, they've got that beaded TPU insole, FKT insole there. That's nice, really love that one. And feels like pretty healthy stack, especially under the forefoot, and that is something with Topo shoes that I do appreciate. They're kind of, at least I would say, oriented towards midfoot strikers more so than, you know, direct heel strikers or mashing of the rear portion of the shoe. Been testing a variety of different trail shoes recently. A lot of lightweight, a lot of two. So something with a bit of, say, enhanced forefoot cushion where zero firmness is felt, and, you know, just soft, cushioned. I mean, really just what the doctor ordered. But then, lo and behold, I get going, checking my watch, and I find myself pretty easily cruising around 8-minute pace. I think I averaged 750 something by the end of the run, and I was really honestly quite shocked because I totally expected to be in the 9+ minute range, maybe shuffling along, legs feeling a little heavy from the workout, and shoes just feeling objectively heavy. I mean, 11.8 ounces, you cannot get around that. It is heavy. For reference, the Mafate 5 in my size 10 is even a little lighter at 11.6 ounces. Now, just to be clear, sometimes I do find after a workout, my legs do feel a bit springy, both the next day and even if I do a second run later in the evening on the same day. But honestly, you know, I still did a pretty solid workout. The shoe is still objectively heavy, and on top of that, I was kind of intentionally trying to go slow. I felt like I was really wanted to just turn the legs over and really not stress at all, no tension in the legs, just kind of get the blood flowing. So it was honestly just pretty shocking to kind of see how smoothly and easily I was running that kind of pace in that kind of shoe. Now, that's by objective measurement and subjective feel for sure. Very impressive right out of the gate. All right, so let's dig into the feel of this midsole right away. I got back from that run, went to the computer, emailed Russ immediately. I said, what did you do to this midsole? This is unlike anything I felt underfoot in any Topo trail shoe. Topo is a little bit cagey with their kind of zip foam details. He did say, yes, they engineered it to be lighter weight and more bouncy than any other previous ZipFoam midsole to match the character and story of the Vista. So take that for what it's worth. Topo just tends to call every midsole ZipFoam and then kind of mention, we tweaked this a little, tweaked that a little different feel here or there in whichever way. And that's kind of all you get out of them. So we'll just go with that, I guess. But there is a noticeable bounce to this midsole that I have not felt with any other Topo trail shoe. Certainly the lighter weight models, also Mountain Racer 3, 4, the new Ultra Venture models. A term that I always come back to with Topo midsoles is that they feel dampening. Like the ZipFoam, it's not light, but it's not, super energetic. It doesn't feel airy like some other super foams, but it has a certain density to it that seems to absorb the ground, kind of in a impact reducing way. Clearly a different feel here, noticeable level of bounce. I mean, straight out of the box. No break-in required with this shoe, none at all. This is actually second day in them. Probably gonna do about 10 miles today, so that'll be 16 over a roughly, say, 28-hour period, maybe even less. But noticeable bounce, noticeable responsive feel underfoot. I don't know if it's the foam itself. I mean, yes, he did say lighter, bouncier, or if it's the volume of foam going up to 38, 32, which is their spec. I did measure 40 again. So I don't know if it's just the combination of those two elements that really lead me to say, not feel the ground at all, not feel like I'm just being kind of dampened or absorbing impact. I really feel like it's giving something back to me here, even with this weight here, which is quite interesting. So you do have that big midsole stack there. Of course, the TPU FKT insole, which is not lightweight compared to other insoles. You've got Vibram Mega Grip in the mix, 4 mil lugs, no skimping there. Probably not as full coverage as, the standard Topo Vibram Mega Grip outsole. So they probably shaved a little bit there, but not in terms of lug depth. Solid quality of the lugs here, a little bit more segmentation, and certainly there's a gap between the front and the rear of the shoe. We'll take a look at that in a little bit. So aside from maybe a little bit of outsole segmentation, they did not really look to scrimp on weight in any of these departments. Also the upper, they definitely did not scrimp in terms of quality materials, durable materials. It's not a papery upper. Certainly they potentially could have saved some weight there, but I don't know, I think people, value the durability of a Topo shoe, and they probably didn't want to mess with that. Now, as far as fit is concerned, I've kind of varied between true to size 9.5 and 10 for Topo models in the past. Sometimes with the 9.5, I can feel like, and this is more apparent when they were using their Ortholite insoles, the front of the insole, the front tip would kind of curl up in front of my toes, and I would get a little bit of irritation around there. I felt more comfortable typically in a US 10, but I have had some 10s that were overly roomy, so it's kind of like I'm probably a 9.75 on Topo scale there. But again, I have a 10 here, and I find them comfortably spacious. You can see I've got this nice, bright Creepers toe sock here in for test. I just love the feel of a toe sock in a Topo shoe, and I think that's typically why I generally prefer to size up to a 10 here. I've got a 10, plenty of space for, say, this is kind of a thicker toe sock here. I also ran in an Injinji midweight toe sock yesterday, so even with those, I don't feel squeezed at all. Extremely comfortable, room for splay for this type of shoe, this type of cruising, at least at the moment now. This sock shoe combo really works well. I did get one comment, somebody had talked about maybe sizing down a full size. I don't really get that unless you maybe have a really narrow foot, in which case Topo might not be the best for you. I don't think I've ever worn a 9 in Topo. So I would, at a minimum, recommend going true to size. And if you're like me, maybe you value comfort, want a thicker sock, mid-weight toe sock, or want to have this shoe for maybe possibly the later stages of a long race, even say a backyard ultra for another example, I'd go a half size up. With that kind of sizing, this kind of, I would say standard Topo width across the forefoot, it's not one of their, say, narrower widths, and I don't think it's as overly wide as, say, the Ultra Venture 3. Not sure about the 4, I didn't try that one, but I'd say it's in the middle of their width range. So that little bit I just ran through, I have to be a little careful. I'm a half size up. It's a wide shoe, a lot of stack underfoot. You don't have the complete security to be really ripping that kind of trail in this shoe, but I'm expecting that. I'm ready for it. So really not an issue or detriment with this shoe. So I am working my way up today here. A little bit different compared to yesterday's flat canal path. I definitely feel the heft of that 11 ounces just carrying it up the hill here. I think that's, no way around it. But I will say, another heavy shoe, even heavier than this one, Mafate X. I felt that was even more noticeable. I think that was 12.4, so even a half ounce heavier than this one, but so stiff. And I felt like that was really troublesome going uphill. This one, it's a lot of stack, but still decently flexible. I'm gonna pop the shoe off up ahead somewhere. It has a decent amount of flex, so even climbing, it feels heavy, but aside from the weight, not excessively uncomfortable. Stop over here, do a quick close-up. My little tripod just broke on me. This is terrible. That's a bummer. Unfortunately, I don't carry a spare tripod in my studio here, so I'm gonna have to try to hold this one steady. US 10 here, tip of my toe is right here, so it's probably a full thumb's width, very close. 7/8 of a thumb, we'll say. So plenty of space, and I have this Creepers toe sock here, which has a bit of volume to it, especially width-wise, and any toe sock, especially mid-weight, is going to spread the toes out a little more, which I absolutely love in a Topo shoe, even an Ultra shoe, maybe some other wide shoes. I was running in the 005 with these socks the other day, and I liked it there. There's a lot of volume in my 10.5 Norda 005. Anyway, with a Topo in a 9.5, sometimes I get the front of it like curling up, at the toes. So I've had that in the past, so kind of like a 10. This is more of a comfort shoe for me. I like it. Take a look at, I do lace locking. I was noticing a touch of slipping. So see this one, I have a light lace lock. You can see that's not loose. So heel hold is not an issue. I think if you have a higher volume heel or just a higher volume foot in general, or you go true to size, not sized up by me, you'll have no problem with heel hold. Again, I just have a little bit of lock just to get a little touch there. One thing I'll note, the tongue is kind of short, so if you do the lace locking here, I'm right at the edge here. So another one of these short tongues from these brand, a little disappointing. Why can't they just, poof it up here a little bit? I don't know. Be less of an issue if you don't lace lock, of course. The row is a little higher up with the lock. One thing I do notice is this second eyelet is pretty far back. It's not, some of them are like higher up and a little closer. At least in this shoe, to my eye, the second eyelet seems a little bit further back than typical. Oh, I forgot to stop my watch. Maybe that pushes it up a little, but I would still say that this is kind of a short tongue. I don't have any bunching in the tongue. And I really like this kind of X design here. The lace goes through in 4 spots. So the tongue is not moving. It's not bunched up anywhere, but it's just kind of low. So, you know, if those of you that are disappointed in that kind of design in not just Topo, but many brands, Hoka is one of them. That's what it is. But it is well padded. It's super cushy. You know, you have this material. Again, I talked about the materials. They're not skimping. This is kind of a comfort material. This may absorb maybe a little bit of moisture, hold a little sweat. I'm like dripping over here. FKT insole here. Super nice. Contributes to the protective and bouncy feel. If you look at the heel area there, you have that same kind of, as the underside of the tongue, it wraps around the heel. Kind of standard here, no issues, no collar bite anywhere at all along the foot. For me, it's totally comfortable, aside from maybe a touch of, just a little touch. So I have that, again, light lace lock. Looking at the bottom of the shoe here, Vibram Mega Grip, you see some kind of segmentation here, certainly in the rear tail of the shoe. Look how kind of flexible that is, and nothing here. So, all right, let me try to do this without my little thing here. There we go. Okay, hope you can see this. So, flex. It's, you know, a little less around the midfoot, but look at that. It definitely flexes here. Torsion is really good. There's no plate in the shoe. No rock plate, no carbon plate, no nothing. Look at that flex. Again, I measure 40, 35, 5 mil drop. They spec 38, 33. It's definitely a healthy stack. And like I said, going uphill compared to, say, Mafate X, you know, it just flexes a little easier. So even though it's heavy, I don't feel like it's holding me back. Definitely heel hold way better than the Mafate X with that flexibility. The grip, of course, this is going to contour kind of like all over the place. They do call this a shoe for technical trails or technical terrain. That's to be determined with, you know, the kind of spacious fit of the shoe and the stack height. I'm not so sure about that, but at least in terms of grip and traction, this is going to contour pretty well over the ground. Again, durable materials here. The upper, you can kind of see through here. It's a little bit, I would say, heavy, but it's an open kind of a mesh, so breathability is pretty good, even though it's a dark shoe and it is sunny and not so hot. It's late in the evening right now. But got this Velcro here. That's awesome. They went away from their proprietary thing here, so you could pretty easily attach a gaiter if you need to. Yeah, I'm just pretty stoked with the ride so far. Pretty happy with it. I would go so far as to say shocked that at 11.8 ounces, this shoe runs so comfortably. So let me head on back down and then we'll see how it fares on the descent here. Not super steep, but a little bit, we'll see. Okay, given my tripod issue here, you're gonna get arm's length point of view. Here we go. Kind of feel a little bit of sliding forward on the descent here. I wouldn't expect this to be super dialed for steeper descents. Again, that's gonna vary a lot based on your foot volume, how much you fill up this shoe, how secure it's gonna feel. For me, being sized up by a half, I'm just really looking at this more of a moderate trails. I will test it in technical terrain in a later run, but I'm not really having it in mind as a real technical shoe. Kind of hazy out here tonight. Maybe a little smoke in the area. Doesn't smell like it though. Somebody also mentioned the laces being slippery and coming untied on them, and that comment was seconded by another person. I personally have not had that issue. I mean, it's my second run in these shoes and they seem like the laces that Topo always uses, and I can't ever recall laces coming untied on me or loosening, so I don't know what's up with that. As far as underfoot feel with this, you've got the kind of standard Topo feel, noticeable contouring under the arch, but I think with the addition of the FKT insole, it does seem to kind of mold a little bit more, or at least you don't get that singular kind of area of pressure pushing up into the arch. Now I know some people just don't like that feel at all. If you have flat feet, that could potentially put a little bit more pressure than you would like. For me, I like that little bit of contouring at the arch area for support. You know, not that I have issues with overpronation, but it just feels comfortable. Like, I like to have, you know, the shoe feel full underneath my foot, especially the arch, you know, not in a kind of directed pushing up sort of a way, but just, you know, a nice hug, you know, a nice little soft hug for the bottom of the foot. I like that feel, and it's kind of what it feels like with the Vista here. So if you got that, you know, familiar contouring under the arch with the Topo, again, I find it quite mild. You've also got a pretty secure midfoot hole. So Topo's got that width across the forefoot, maintains the width at the front of the toes. It does that in this model. Some of their models are a little narrower, but this one's pretty good with that. And as standard with Topo, the midfoot's a bit snugger, so you get a real nice squeeze, which I like. I like to have, say, that width, you know, at the toe box for comfort, but I also want to feel like really dialed around the middle of the foot. So just for a bit of context, as far as my testing, I just did a best cushion trail shoes 2025 video. Shortly after releasing that video, of course, I got a slew of very interesting cushion shoes to test one day after another. First on Cloud Surfer Trail 2. Next day, I got this shoe, the Vista. Today, I got the Hoka Challenger 8, which I actually ran 6 miles in earlier in the day. And later in the day, I got the Mountain to Coast H1. So I've run in 3 of those shoes already, not the H1 just yet. I may have to do kind of a follow-up cushion video because each of these shoes is pretty good, but interesting in their own way. When I do this kind of sit-down Q&A kind of videos, I like to hone in on details and maybe slight variations in feel, ride, all that kind of stuff between different models. I think that's pretty fun and interesting. So I may have to do one specifically to, you know, best cushion first week of September 2025, something like that. So without getting into too much comparison at the moment, I will say the Vista here feels like the shoe that's the most, I would say, midfoot oriented, or quote unquote, you know, like a natural running style. I definitely personally like to have a bit more cushioning around the forefoot without it feeling like it's really pancaking out, and I think that's something that the Vista really provides here. Of course, it's a lot of stack. Of course, it's heavy, but it's fully protective under the forefoot, the middle of the shoe. And the difference perhaps between this shoe, you know, Topos in general, compared to other type of brands and other types of models, is that it's relatively narrow under the midfoot and the heel. You don't have that kind of extended heel platform crash pad. Yeah, you don't have like an overly wide heel or just an overly kind of smushy marshmallow of a heel. You can see the forefoot width quite wide, but still streamlined, doesn't flare out too much, but the heel, again, not much sticking way out from the back, not much overhanging on either side of the heel. And I feel like that's a difference between a lot of max cushion shoes. This one really feels, you know, Topos in general, they just feel quite well balanced. You know, with this much cushion, not having a massive amount under the heel is just, it just brings balance to the shoe. So that's a wrap on first 2 days in the Topo Vista out of the box. I will be at about 18 miles by the time I get back from this run. You will be seeing more from this shoe here. Let me know down in the comments what comparisons you would like to see. I do want to test it out in technical terrain, so probably some A, B, C, D comparison testing with some of those other shoes I mentioned is in order. Let me know what you're most interested in. I would say final thoughts right now after say 28 hours in this shoe. It is unlike any Topo shoe you have felt in the past. I'm fairly certain on that one. If you are certainly in the market for a max stack shoe and maybe looking for something leaning a bit towards comfort, especially in the toe box, Topo is well known for that. So this would be certainly a shoe and a model to take a look at, give strong consideration to. Again, you have to make judgments on the weight. I've been, getting those quiver submissions. Thank you for that, by the way. If you have sent me one in, they're kind of piling up, so I'm not sure when I'm going to be able to get to the next one of those. But I have been hearing from, say, heavier runners, and that's something I definitely want to take into consideration during my reviews. Not everyone is like 140 pounds soaking wet. I want to talk about shoes that can, work across the spectrum of runners, body types, etc., etc. So, higher cushion, denser feel, yet again, still having that bounce and reactivity here. Very cool. Something to consider for sure. So please do check out the links and information in the description below. Got that 10% off every order from thefeed.com. That is a new partnership for me. I have some cool stuff on the way. So once that stuff comes in, start seeing a little bit more fueling and hydration testing. In the meantime, you can save yourself 10%, help support the channel, all that good stuff. Check out www.humblerunning.com. Sign up for my newsletter. Don't miss any videos, website content, Instagram post, stuff that's in for test, future training and racing episodes. Do have some racing coming up, so check out my last newsletter for that. I will see you out on the trails. Have a good one.